The calibration chamber smelled of stale recycled air and the faint metallic tang of cooling gel. 53 cadets from 17 species stood in loose rows, their attention fixed on the kinetic absorption pillar at the center of the room. The pillar was a matte gray column threaded with sensor strips, designed to measure striking force with cold precision. Leo Vance tried to steady his breathing. He had been at the Unity Nexus Academy for 4 months, and every single day had scraped away another layer of his confidence. Today would scrape deeper. Instructor Velik, a slender sylph with plumage that shifted from indigo to ash depending on his mood, tapped his data slate. Cadet Vance, step forward. Standard calibration strike. Leo walked to the pillar. He could feel the eyes of the other cadets on him, most with bored contempt, some with scientific curiosity, a few with the particular flavor of amusement reserved for watching a weak creature struggle. Kravok, a Vrex built like a walking siege engine, let out a low rumble that passed for laughter among his kind. 200 credits says he breaks a finger, Kravok muttered, just loud enough. The Vrex's squad mates snorted. Their species wore conflict like a second skin. Their armored plates could shrug off industrial cutting tools. Next to them, Leo was a pale, soft-limbed biped who looked like he might bruise in a strong wind. Leo set his stance. He remembered the training videos from Earth. Throwing a punch meant rotating the hips, driving through the legs, aligning the knuckles. He did everything right. He snapped his fist into the pillar. A flat chime. Numbers flickered on the overhead display, 240 newtons. The chamber went quiet for a single heartbeat, then erupted. Kravok's rumble became a full, resonant bark. Even Velik's plumage flickered with something close to embarrassment. 240 newtons, the instructor repeated, as if the number might change on a second reading. Cadet Vance, that is the lowest score recorded in this facility since the Threx ambassador's tadpole offspring took the test as a diplomatic gesture. The tadpole scored 310. Leo's face burned. He had no response. Kravok stepped forward without being called, the floor vibrating under his mass. "Allow me to demonstrate how a real strike looks, instructor." He didn't wait for permission. His arm, thick as Leo's entire body, swung in a blur. The impact was a thunderclap. The display screamed 41,000 newtons. The pillar groaned, recalibrating. I held back, Kravok said, turning to face the human directly. "I did not wish to damage the equipment. Perhaps your species should consider a similar courtesy to yourselves. How do you defend anything? How do you open doors?" More laughter. Leo's hands curled into fists at his sides. The anger was there, hot and useless. Across the chamber, half hidden in the shadow of an observation balcony, a single figure watched without laughing. Lena Osai, the only other human in the Academy's current cycle, stood with her arms crossed. She was a slight figure assigned to the engineering track, rarely speaking to anyone. Until now, Leo had been grateful for her silence. It meant one less human drawing mockery. But now, as Kravok's jeers echoed, Lena's stillness felt different, weighted. "I will make this simple," Kravok announced, spreading his arms to address the whole chamber. "Tomorrow, live sparring, full contact, armor permitted. I will face any human who dares step into the ring. A single bout. Let the galaxy see what we all know." Leo's throat tightened. He was the only human warrior track cadet. The challenge was aimed at him like a fired shell. "Perhaps not the tadpolekin," Kravok added, "but someone, anyone." Laughter. Leo's feet felt nailed to the floor. He tried to form words, some defiance, but his voice failed. Then a new voice cut through, clear and unhurried. "I'll fight him." Every head turned. Lena had moved to the edge of the chamber floor, her expression unreadable. She wasn't looking at Kravok. She was looking at Leo, and her gaze said something he couldn't yet name. Kravok's laugh this time was genuine delight. "The engineer, this is a joke." "No joke," Lena said. "Tomorrow, full contact, wear your best armor." The chamber erupted again. Velik tried to restore order, but the damage was done. The challenge was set. Leo found his voice only after Lena turned to leave. "Wait, Lena, you can't, he'll break you." She paused, glancing back over her shoulder. Her eyes held something ancient and patient. "No, Leo, he won't." She walked out. The lights of the calibration chamber flickered as if the building itself had shuddered. Kravok was still laughing, but something in the sound had gone hollow. Leo stared at his own hands, hands that could only manage 240 newtons, and wondered what Lena Osei knew that he didn't. The overhead display dimmed, but the numbers stayed burned into his vision, a brand of inadequacy that pulsed with every heartbeat. The arena was a bowl of pale stone and reinforced transparent barriers, designed to contain everything from plasma discharge to uncontrolled chemical reactions. By the time the morning cycle's second bell chimed, every seat was filled. Cadets, instructors, maintenance staff, even a few visiting dignitaries had found excuses to be present. Word of the human engineer challenging a Vrex warrior in full combat plate had spread faster than a hull breach alarm. Leo sat in the front row, his stomach a knot of cold dread. He had barely slept. Twice he tried to reach Lena to beg her to back out, but her quarters had been sealed and his messages went unanswered. Kravok entered first. The Vrex wore his battle armor, interlocking composite slabs of dark gray, scarred from a dozen previous bouts. The plating hummed with power assist servos. His helmet was off, revealing a broad reptilian face with amber eyes that gleamed with anticipation. The crowd roared. Kravok raised a clawed fist, basking in the adulation. Then Lena walked in. She wore standard academy fatigues. No armor, no exoskeleton, no visible weapons. Her feet were bare, Leo noticed, the soles padding silently across the stone floor. The contrast was so absurd that even the alien spectators went quiet, confusion overriding their bloodlust. The arena controller, a Threx with clicking mandibles, spoke through the address system. Cadet Osei, you are entitled to protective gear per Regulation 7-. Declined, Lena said. Kravok's laughter boomed. He slapped his chest plate, producing a resonant clang. I almost feel shame. This is not a fight, it is an execution. Little engineer, I have killed things larger than your entire species without leaving my sleeping pod. Lena said nothing. She walked to the center of the ring and stopped, her weight settling into her hips, her arms loose at her sides. Her breathing was steady. Leo noticed her eyes were half-lidded, the way a predator might look while resting between hunts. Last chance, Kravok rumbled, lowering his helmet, the faceplate sealed with a hiss. Yield now and I will only break one arm, a souvenir for your grandchildren. Lena's response was so quiet the microphones barely caught it. Begin, the buzzer screamed. Kravok exploded forward. For a creature of his mass, the speed was shocking, a freight train of armor and muscle crossing the distance in 3 strides. He brought his training blade around in a horizontal arc designed to swat Lena into the barrier like an insect. Lena moved. She didn't dodge so much as stop being where the blade was. One moment she was still, the next she had shifted 2 feet to the left, the blade whistling through empty air. Kravok compensated, revering his swing, but she was already inside his reach. Her bare feet slid across the stone as if she were skating on ice. Leo watched, breath caught. This wasn't the clumsy scrambling of a desperate novice. This was precision, calculated economy. Something was wrong with this picture. Kravok roared in frustration and abandoned the blade, lunging with both arms to grapple. That was a mistake. A Vrex's grapple was a death sentence for most species. Their crushing strength could buckle starship bulkheads. But Lena didn't flee. She stepped into the embrace. The crowd gasped. Kravok's arms closed. And then Lena planted her feet. The motion was slight, just a shift of weight, a settling of the spine that made her look, for a split second, like a mountain deciding to exist. Her right arm drew back. Her fingers curled into a fist. Her eyes opened fully for the first time, and Leo saw something in them that made his blood chill and burn at the same instant. It was the look of someone who had been holding a scream inside for a very, very long time. Kravok saw it too. The Vrex's amber eyes widened behind his visor. He tried to retreat, to release his hold, but Lena's left hand had latched onto his wrist with an immovable grip. Her fist came forward. It was not fast. It was not flashy. It was simply inevitable, like a planet turning toward the sun. The punch connected with the center of Kravok's chest plate. The sound bypassed the arena's audio dampeners entirely. It hit the spectators like a physical wave, a deep, resonant crack that echoed off the stone walls and vibrated through the transparent barriers. Several cadets flinched. A Sylph instructor's plumage went stark white. Kravok's chest plate didn't dent. It fractured. The composite slab, rated to withstand a direct hit from a light vehicle, split in a radiating web of jagged fissures. Pieces the size of dinner plates sheared away and clattered across the stone floor. The power assist servos shrieked, overloaded, and died with a shower of sparks. Kravok's body lifted off the ground, and flew backward 6 meters before crashing onto his back, his helmet cracking against the floor. He did not get up. Silence. Real silence, the kind that fills a space so completely it becomes a sound of its own. Then the medical alarms went off. The arena sensors, finally catching up to what they had just witnessed, flooded the displays with frantic data. One number pulsed at the top of every screen: 62,000 newtons. 62,000. Leo couldn't breathe. His mind kept trying to reconcile the figure with the woman standing in the center of the ring. 62,000 newtons was a statistic you associated with industrial pile drivers, not human fists. It was 40% higher than Kravok's own strike. He did the math automatically, over 250 times what he himself had scored the day before. Medics rushed past him. Kravok was alive, the initial reports indicated, but his armor had absorbed so much of the impact that the shockwave had triggered his species' hibernation reflex. He would recover. The armor would not. Lena hadn't moved. She stood over the fallen Vrex, her fist still extended, her knuckles unmarked. The skin wasn't even reddened. She lowered her arm slowly as if she were setting down something fragile. Leo found himself on his feet without remembering standing. His voice cracked. "How?" Lena turned to face him. The arena lights caught her eyes, and Leo saw it clearly now, the thing that had been lurking behind her stillness. It was exhaustion. A bone-deep weariness that had nothing to do with the punch she'd just thrown. "I've been holding back," she said. The microphones caught it. The whole arena heard. "We've all been holding back." The words dropped into the silence like stones into deep water. Then everything erupted. Instructors shouting orders. Security personnel pushing through the crowd. The Threx controller demanding a full systems diagnostic because the sensors must be malfunctioning. Voices overlapping, arguing, denying what they had all just witnessed with their own eyes. The Academy's security director, a hard-faced Threx named Zurak, appeared at the edge of the ring with a squad of armed personnel. His mandibles clicked in the rapid pattern that indicated extreme agitation. "Cadet Os," Zurak announced, his voice amplified, "you are to submit to immediate medical examination and physical analysis. Do not resist." Lena didn't look at him. She was still looking at Leo, and her expression carried an urgency that cut through the chaos. She mouthed 2 words: "Get ready." Leo didn't understand. Get ready for what? He opened his mouth to ask, but Zurak's people were already moving, surrounding Lena with containment fields and sensor wands. She offered no resistance as they led her away. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with confusion. Leo stood frozen, his hands trembling. 240 newtons. 62,000 newtons. The gap between those numbers wasn't just a measurement. It was a canyon that hid something enormous. Somewhere far from the Academy, in a sealed chamber aboard a station that didn't officially exist, a recording of the arena footage began to play on a private screen. The viewer watched Lena's punch 6 times, then 7. Then they opened a communication channel and spoke 3 words that would ripple across the galaxy. "Activate contingency protocol." The Preservation Directorate had just found its new priority target. The infirmary wing smelled of antiseptic, and the faint ozone-adjacent scent of healing accelerators. Kravok lay in a reinforced medical bed, his chest wrapped in regenerative webbing. The fractures in his armor had been mirrored by deep bruising across his sternum, but the Vrex's natural resilience was already mending the damage. His pride would take longer. He was awake when Leo visited. The amber eyes tracked the human's approach with something unfamiliar, not hostility, not fear, but a contemplative stillness. "You knew," Kravok rumbled, his voice stripped of its earlier mockery. "I didn't," Leo said. "I swear I didn't." Kravok studied him for a long moment, then let out a slow exhale that vibrated through the bed frame. "Then your species has been lying to itself as well as to us. That is almost more frightening." Before Leo could respond, an academy-wide announcement chimed. All cadets and personnel were to report to their quarters. An emergency inquiry had been convened. Non-compliance would be met with force. Leo didn't go to his quarters. He went to the observation lounge overlooking the administrative wing, where he could see the inquiry chamber through a slanted window. Lena was inside, seated at a central table. She looked small in the sterile room, surrounded by academy officials and compact representatives, but her posture remained unbroken. The human ambassador arrived 20 minutes later. Her name was Ife Okonkwo, and she moved with the calm authority of someone who had navigated 100 diplomatic crises before breakfast. Her voice, when she spoke, was amplified for the assembled officials, and Leo realized, for a live transmission being broadcast across multiple systems. What Cadet Osai demonstrated today was not an anomaly, Ambassador Okonkwo said. It was a glimpse of baseline human capability. The room erupted, demands for explanation, accusations of deception, threats of sanctions. Okonkwo waited for the noise to subside. Earth's gravity is 1.3 times the galactic standard comfortable range. Our evolutionary path required dense muscle fiber, impact-resistant bone structure, and a nervous system capable of extraordinary burst output. We did not choose this. We survived this. Then why hide it? Zurek demanded. Because when we first made contact, we realized that our natural capabilities would make us seem like monsters. We wanted to be neighbors, not nightmares. So we developed nanite limiters, microscopic suppressors implanted in every human at birth that reduce our physical output to approximately 5% of its potential. We chose to be small so you would not feel small beside us. Leo's hand moved to his own chest. He had never felt any device, any implant. But then, he had never had reason to push against it. Cadet Osai's limiter malfunctioned, Okonkwo continued. She has lived with full human capability for 3 years. She reported the malfunction and we chose to observe rather than repair, a long-term study on integration. Her decision to reveal herself today was not authorized, but it was not a betrayal, it was necessary. The silence that followed was heavier than any noise. Leo watched the faces of the alien officials, shock, yes, but something else creeping in at the edges, fear, and behind the fear, calculation. The Preservation Directorate struck before the inquiry could conclude. There was no warning. One moment the corridor outside the lounge was empty. The next, it was full of armored figures in non-academy tactical gear, their weapons already raised. Neurostun rounds punched through the air. Leo threw himself sideways, but the first volley wasn't aimed at him. Lena's escort crumpled. She twisted, trying to rise, but a second round caught her in the shoulder and dropped her in convulsions. The Directorate agents moved with clinical efficiency, slapping restraint cuffs on her wrists while another pressed an injector to her neck. Leo burst through the lounge door without thinking. "Get away from her!" The nearest agent turned, weapon swinging. Leo saw the muzzle, saw the finger tighten, and something inside him that had been coiled tight for 19 years finally snapped. Not his control, not his patience, something physical. Something deep in his cells that had been screaming silently since the day he was born. He threw a punch at the agent's helmet. The impact jarred his arm, only denting the composite, a 240-Newton strike that was already more than his limiter should have allowed. But the feedback triggered something else. A cascade failure. The nanites in his bloodstream, taxed beyond their limits by adrenaline and desperation and the raw, blazing refusal to be helpless, began to shut down. One by one, millions of microscopic shackles went dark. Leo Vance felt true strength for the first time in his life. It was like drowning and surfacing in the same instant. Every muscle woke. Every nerve sang. The world sharpened to impossible clarity, and his body responded with a speed and power that his mind barely had time to register. He moved. The agent who had darted Lena went flying into a wall with enough force to crack the paneling. The next agent raised a shock baton. Leo caught it, crushed the casing in his grip, and drove his other hand through the chest plate. Not cracking it, punching through it, fingers curling into wiring and undersuit. He yanked and the entire front assembly tore free. The remaining agents opened fire. Leo didn't dodge. His body was already somewhere else, closing the distance in a blur of motion that left afterimages. He broke their weapons. He broke their armor. He broke their formation and their confidence in the space of 5 seconds. Then the surge faded and he dropped to his knees beside Lena, shaking. His hands, his impossible, terrifying hands, were slick with hydraulic fluid and ceramic fragments, but when he touched her face, they were gentle. "Leo," she whispered, her eyes fighting the sedatives. "Welcome back." Kravok appeared in the corridor, limping but upright, flanked by a squad of Academy security who had removed their Directorate insignia patches and thrown them to the floor. "The Directorate has declared all humans hostile," the Vrex said. "They are sending a strike force. If you wish to live, you will come with me now." Leo lifted Lena in his arms. She weighed less than a thought and followed. Behind them, the inquiry chamber broadcast was still running. Across a dozen systems, Species watched a human boy who had scored 240 newtons lift another human, as if she were made of air, surrounded by broken armor and stunned Directorate soldiers, walking with a Vrex warrior who had decided that honor mattered more than orders. The galaxy began to choose sides. Kravok led them through maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the Academy's main structure. The Vrex moved with surprising quiet for his bulk, his armored shoulders scraping the ceiling in the narrower passages. Leo followed, still carrying Lena, still processing the hurricane of sensation that raged through his newly awakened body. Every step felt like a revelation. The texture of the floor beneath his boots, the minute vibrations of distant machinery, the smell of coolant and warm electronics. His senses had always been dull, filtered through the muted interface of the limiter. Now the filter was gone and the world was almost painfully vivid. Lena stirred in his arms. The sedatives were wearing off, her enhanced metabolism burning through them faster than the Directorate had planned. "You can put me down," she murmured. "I'm not sure I can," Leo admitted. "I'm not sure I know how to stop moving." She twisted gently and he let her feet touch the ground. She stood on her own, testing her limbs, then met his eyes. "It's overwhelming at first. The limiter doesn't just restrict strength, it damps proprioception, adrenal response, sensory intake. Everything hits at once when it goes." "How did you manage for 3 years?" Lena's expression flickered. "Badly at first. I broke a lot of things, hurt a few people I didn't mean to hurt. Then I learned control. You'll learn too, but we don't have time for lessons." Kravok stopped at a junction, raising a claw for silence. The tunnel ahead opened into a maintenance bay that served as a staging area for the Academy's defense systems. Voices echoed from around the corner, not Academy personnel. Directorate soldiers coordinating their breach. "They've locked down the main hangar," Kravok rumbled. "We have allies there, cadets from 6 species who refuse to let the Directorate turn this place into a slaughterhouse, but we need to reach them." "How many soldiers between us and the hangar?" Lena asked. "At least 12. Possibly more. Heavy armor, military-grade weapons." Kravok's amber eyes shifted to Leo. "You just discovered your strength minutes ago. In a controlled engagement, you are a liability. In a desperate one, perhaps not." Leo flexed his hands. The fear was still there, but it had changed shape. It wasn't the paralyzing dread of inadequacy anymore. It was the electric tension of a coiled spring waiting for release. "I'm not staying behind," he said. "I did not ask you to." The first Directorate patrol rounded the corner before they could plan further. 6 soldiers in full tactical gear, rifles raised, scanning with helmet-mounted sensors. The lead soldier spotted Kravok's silhouette and opened fire. Lena moved. Leo had seen her dodge in the arena, but now he understood what he had been watching. A body operating at full human capacity, every motion optimized by years of training. She flowed around the plasma bolts like water around stones, closing the distance and striking the lead soldier's weapon arm. The limb bent the wrong way and the rifle clattered free. Leo followed. His control was crude, too much force, too little precision, but his speed was undeniable. He crashed into the second soldier's shoulder first, and the impact sent both of them tumbling. The soldier's armor buckled at the seams. Leo rolled to his feet, grabbed a third soldier's rifle barrel and bent it into a U-shape with a grunt of effort. The skirmish lasted 18 seconds. All 6 Directorate soldiers were down, their armor compromised, their weapons destroyed. Kravok finished the last one with a backhand that rattled the tunnel walls. "Acceptable," the Vrex said. "For a beginner." They pushed forward, more patrols, more brief, brutal exchanges. By the time they reached the maintenance bay doors, Leo had lost count of how many soldiers he had dismantled. His knuckles throbbed, but the skin wasn't broken. The bone density Okonkwo had described was no exaggeration. Kravak keyed opened the blast doors, and they stepped into the main hangar. It was a cavernous space filled with training vehicles, equipment racks, and a defensive position cobbled together from cargo containers and portable shield generators. Behind the barricade stood 24 cadets, a patchwork of species, some in partial armor, some armed with improvised weapons. They had torn the Directorate insignia from their uniforms and scrawled new symbols in their place, a circle of linked hands. "You made it," said a young sylph with plumage the color of a bruised sky. "The Directorate is broadcasting. They're calling you an invasive species, a bioweapon. They're demanding every compact world turn over their human populations for containment." Leo felt the weight of those words settle into his chest. An invasive species, containment. He thought of his family back on Earth, his younger brother who had just entered his first year of schooling, his parents who had always told him to be polite, be gentle, be small so others would feel comfortable. Lena put a hand on his shoulder. They were always going to react this way. The secret couldn't hold forever. "Then what do we do now?" Leo asked. The hangar's external sensors blared a warning. The Directorate strike force had arrived. Not just soldiers, but armored transports and at least one heavy gunship descending through the Academy's breached perimeter shields. Lena looked at the approaching threat, then at the ragtag defenders who had chosen to stand with them despite everything. "We show them that we were holding back for their sake," she said. "Not ours." The hangar doors began to buckle under the first assault. The gunship's first salvo punched through the hangar's outer wall like a fist through paper. Fire-suppressant foam sprayed from ruptured pipes, mingling with smoke and the shriek of stressed metal. The defenders scattered to pre-assigned positions, moving with the desperate coordination of cadets who had trained for drills but never for real combat. Leo found himself behind a cargo container alongside Kravak and a stocky Threx engineering student whose name he didn't know. The Threx was rewiring a portable shield generator with 3 of his 4 hands while the 4th held a cutting torch like a weapon. "They'll breach in 40 seconds, the Threx said, mandibles clicking. "The shield will buy us another minute, maybe 2. "Then we make those minutes count," Kravak growled. Lena was across the hangar directing the Sylph defenders to flanking positions. Her voice cut through the chaos, calm and precise. She had done this before, Leo realized. Not here, not against Directorate forces, but somewhere. There were layers to her that he was only beginning to glimpse. The outer wall collapsed. Directorate soldiers poured through the breach, not the same armored security they had faced in the tunnels, but military-grade shock troops in powered exoskeletons. Their weapons hot and their formation tight. The lead squad deployed a mobile barrier and began advancing, laying down suppressive fire that forced the defenders to keep their heads down. Leo watched the barrier creep forward. It was a wall of energy and composite plate, heavy enough to shrug off anything the cadets could throw at it. Behind it, a dozen soldiers moved with mechanical precision. He thought about 240 newtons. He thought about all the years he had believed himself weak, all the times he had stepped aside and let others take the lead because he was certain he had nothing to contribute. Then he stopped thinking and moved. He vaulted the cargo container, clearing it by a margin that startled even him, and hit the hangar floor running. Plasma bolts scorched the air around him. One grazed his shoulder and the pain was sharp but distant, a problem to be processed later. His focus had narrowed to a single point, the mobile barrier. The soldiers behind it saw him coming. Their fire intensified. Leo didn't slow, he accelerated, dropping low and driving his shoulder into the barrier's lower edge. The composite plate buckled. The energy field flickered. The entire assembly, soldiers and all, lurched backward. Kravak was behind him, roaring something that might have been a battle cry or a curse. The Vrex slammed into the compromised barrier and tore it aside with both claws. The Threx engineering student followed, his cutting torch finding gaps in power armor and exploiting them with surgical precision. The Directorate formation broke. Soldiers scattered and the defenders surged forward. It was chaos, plasma and composite and the shriek of servos, but it was no longer one-sided. Lena found Leo in the melee. Her face was smudged with soot, but her eyes were bright. "You're learning." "Fast learner," he said, ducking a swing from a soldier's shock gauntlet and responding with a punch that cracked the gauntlet's housing. "Apparently it's genetic." The tide turned. Two more squads of Directorate troops attempted to breach the hangar, but the defenders had found their rhythm. The Sylph used their agility to flank and disrupt. The Vrex cadets, 3 more had joined Kravok by now, formed a brutal front line. The Threx engineers deployed improvised countermeasures that scrambled Directorate targeting systems. And at the center of it all, the two humans fought with a coordination that felt almost telepathic. Lena's precision and Leo's raw power complemented each other, creating gaps that the other defenders exploited. They weren't just surviving, they were winning. Then Ambassador Okonkwo's voice rang out across every open channel. "This is Ambassador Ife Okonkwo of Earth. The Compact of Worlds has reviewed the evidence presented by the human delegation. The Preservation Directorate's declaration of humanity as a hostile species has been ruled unlawful by a supermajority vote. The Directorate's emergency powers are revoked effective immediately. All Directorate forces are ordered to stand down and return to their garrisons. Noncompliance will be treated as insurrection." The broadcast continued, but Leo didn't hear the rest. He was staring at the breach, where the Directorate soldiers were faltering, their tactical displays flooding with recall orders and conflicting commands. The strike force's cohesion wavered, and then a new sound filled the hangar, a deep, throbbing hum that vibrated through the floor and climbed into the bones of everyone present. The Directorate commander had not received the recall order, or had received it and chosen to ignore it. The gunship hovering outside the breach rotated, and its undercarriage opened to reveal not a weapon but a device. A sphere of twisted metal and glowing conduits that pulsed with gravitational distortion. The gravitic disruptor activated. The world pressed down. Leo felt his knees buckle, felt the air thicken into syrup. Around him the defenders collapsed, Kravok pinned to the floor, the Sylph crushed against the barricades, the Threx struggling to breathe under a force that multiplied their body weight tenfold. Only the two humans remained standing, bent, straining, but standing. The Sylph commander's voice boomed from the gunship's speakers. "You think your strength makes you superior. Let us see how superior you are under the weight of a collapsing star." Lena looked at Leo. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her muscles corded with effort. "Walk with me," she said. They walked. Every step was a battle. The gravitic field pressed down with the weight of a small planet, and Leo felt his bones creak under the strain. But they didn't break. They had evolved on a world that demanded this of them, a world that had sculpted their ancestors into creatures capable of enduring forces that would liquefy most life. Beside him, Lena moved with the same agonizing, unstoppable determination. Her bare feet left shallow impressions in the hangar floor, the stone cracking under a pressure that should have shattered it entirely. The disruptor field wasn't just pressing down, it was fluctuating, pulsing in waves meant to disorient and collapse their nervous systems. Human neurology, it turned out, had evolved for that too. 15 meters, Lena said, her voice tight. "The core is exposed. The field generator needs an external housing to shield it, but they deployed in haste. Hit the core and it fails. Hit the core hard enough and it fails catastrophically. We need to control the detonation or it takes out half the hangar." Leo processed that. Control, precision, not just brute force, aimed force. The same lesson he had been learning since the moment his limiter died. They advanced. The Sylph commander's voice rose in pitch, barking orders that the gunship's crew couldn't execute because the disruptor was drawing all available power. The Directorate soldiers who had survived the earlier fighting could only watch, pinned to the floor by the same field that was supposed to crush the humans. Leo reached the disruptor first. Up close, the device was ugly, functional, brutal, a weapon designed by minds that had never considered what might happen if their target refused to fall. The core was a pulsing sphere of compressed graviton particles, contained by a magnetic bottle that flickered with strain. He drew back his fist. He thought about 240 newtons and almost laughed. Then he punched the core. Not with all his strength, with exactly enough. The magnetic bottle shattered, but the graviton release was directional, channeled upward through the housing he had already cracked open. The disruptor screamed and died, and the crushing weight vanished. The backlash sent the gunship lurching sideways. Its stabilizers failed, and it scraped along the hangar floor, shedding armor plates. The Directorate commander scrambled from the wreckage, his sylph plumage scorched and broken, his eyes wild with disbelief. Leo was already there. He didn't hit the commander, he didn't need to. He simply placed a hand on the sylph's shoulder, just a hand, just enough pressure to dimple the exosuit's pauldron. The composite creaked. The commander went very, very still. "We could have done this from the beginning," Leo said, quiet enough that only the sylph could hear. "We chose not to. Do you understand now? It was never weakness, it was a gift." The commander's beak opened, but no words came. The pauldron cracked, a hairline fissure, nothing more. Leo released his grip and stepped back. "Surrender," he said. The commander surrendered. The aftermath took weeks to unfold, but the critical changes happened in the first 48 hours. The Preservation Directorate was dissolved, its leadership arrested, its propaganda archives opened to public scrutiny. The human delegation's evidence, decades of carefully documented restraint, of limiters voluntarily worn and strength deliberately muted, was broadcast across every compact system. Kravok addressed the compact assembly personally, his chest still wrapped in healing webbing. "I was the first to mock them. I was the first to be proven wrong. Let me be the first to say, they did not lie to us out of deception. They held back out of respect. That is a distinction worth recognizing." The vote to grant humanity full, unlimited status within the compact passed with the largest majority in galactic history. On the day the Academy reopened, Leo and Lena stood in the central courtyard. The damage from the battle was still being repaired, but the sky was clear, and the air smelled like something new. They had chosen not to reimplant their limiters. Neither had most of the other humans scattered across compact space. The galaxy would need to adjust, and there would be friction, fear, moments of misunderstanding. But adjustment was possible. They had proven that. A group of alien children approached, 3 small sylphs, a young Vrex, a pair of Threx adolescents. They had been watching from a distance. Summoned by some mixture of curiosity and the fearless incomprehension of the very young, the smallest sylph, plumage still downy, pointed at Leo's hands. "Are those the hands that broke the armor?" Leo knelt. He turned his palms up, displaying fingers that could tear through composite but had chosen instead to crack only enough to prove a point. "These are the hands that broke the armor," he said. "But they're also the hands that helped carry a friend to safety. And the hands that stopped a fight before it became a war. And the hands that will help rebuild this place. They're just hands. They do what I tell them to do." The small sylph considered this. Then, with the absolute certainty of childhood, it reached out and placed its tiny 3-fingered hand in Leo's palm. He closed his grip carefully, so carefully, and felt something shift in his chest. Not a limit. A promise. Lena watched from a few paces away, her own hands clasped behind her back. A smile touched the corner of her mouth. "You're getting the hang of it," she said. "Slow learner," Leo replied, "but I get there." The children, emboldened by the sylph's example, crowded closer. Questions tumbled out in a dozen languages. "Can you lift that statue? Can you bend that railing? Can you teach us how to punch like that?" Leo looked at his hands again. 240 newtons. 62,000. Those numbers had defined him for so long, but they weren't definitions at all. They were just measurements. The thing that mattered was what he chose to do with the strength behind them. He stood, the sylph child still clinging to his fingers, and faced the crowd of small, eager faces. "The first lesson," he said, "is that a punch isn't about how hard you hit. It's about knowing when to throw it and when to hold it back." Somewhere in the Academy's observation tower, Ambassador Okonkwo watched the scene and allowed herself a rare, genuine smile. The secret was out. The galaxy was watching. And so far, humanity was giving them something worth seeing.